Hello, my name is Micaiah Stevens. Welcome to development log number 8. We are working on a game for Haven Studios. It's called Hamlet. You can leave a comment in the video. So the status report, we're still at the point 0.8 live branch. It's the point 0.08. And I'm getting tired of saying this, so hopefully, and we're on the point 0.10 beta branch. One of the big caveats is we've made some massive progress since last time, so we have this big soon. Hopefully, that's probably one of the next things we want to work on is to figure out how we're doing our deployment now that a lot of things have changed. So we started the log 7 on March 24th, so pretty good about the development logs at least. Our goal is to do these once a week. We just think it's a nice recap for the week, but we are getting anyways, we're just doing them on Sunday, Monday, so it seems good. It helps that we pre-record some stuff as we're doing now, so it's up first. Anyways, we're on Steam. Talked about some of the topics, which we're going to talk about a fun game bug. And then we're going to switch it up and talk about coming soon, because everything else we're going to be talking about. I thought about putting the coming soon before the fun game bug, but I think it's kind of, we're still in early access development, so a lot of these things are sort of, and then we have this unknown, which is last time, which previous was dungeons, so now we're going to be talking about what we alluded to last week, hopefully. Anyway, so we got a fun bug, but I thought I'd make a quote. It seemed says, "You are walking through a red forest." This is from 12 Monkeys, so it's available on Sci-Fi. This is from the TV show. So where are we at here? Sorry. So we put together, this is our kind of the build. Let's see. Yes, you were at version 0.0. We usually don't maintain the internal DevLog file because the project, and this is from, it's from the Haven game engine, which we'll be talking a little bit about. So we put a lot of this together. You can sort of see that we reorganized the menu a little bit, and when you click on campaign, it sort of goes through the same sort of thing. It's having these three things, but one thing we've noticed too is the campaign sort of, the menu sits over here. We need to move it back over there. Just little minor tweaks and stuff. But we're developing a brand new system, which I guess we're a kind of a data system, and that was all being, so we put everything back into this. This is something we're called the game engine. I guess we should have talked about this, the coming soon first. Anyways, and then we put everything together, and so we see the nodes, and the black nodes are sort of signifying that a character is standing on. There's an agent there, or a character, or whatever you want to call him, a user. Harry Wool is there on 11.9, and so a lot of that, and we can showcase some of the other fun little things. But it just it was pretty interesting that we dumped everything together, and then we're like, whoa, what's wrong? So took us a couple days to actually track down what was sort of going on there, but it was actually something quite simple. We were just we were storing a data piece as an integer, and we converted that to a string, and we just did it the wrong way. We had to convert it from the integer, the type it was, into an integer first, and then to a string. And we're just taking it's an enumeration basically. We're taking the enumeration and turning it to a string, and so that was sort of saying, hey, it's a node, or it's whatever the node is, and that was writing that out to a string. And then we were trying to read that back in as an int, and it was like, it sort of was like, okay, well, you're not an int, so return 0, which is, anyway, so that's the fun little bug. It took us a while, but also, I'm not sure if you can really tell, but I just feel that right about here, it takes about a couple seconds for the game to sort of boot, but after that, it loads in. I think we're loading about a couple hundred by, like 50 by 50 tiles. So it's not small, and it's not big, but it's actually quite impressive. So, anyways, just in the focus of moving the video along. Over here. So, so you can see why it's walking through a red forest of nodes. Hopefully I spelled the through correctly, but anyways, always make a few mistakes here and there in spelling. But yeah, so we should have talked about this in develop. So we have this in development, not promised, coming soon. And then yeah, so yeah, I just like to caveat these out. I know this is kind of this some of the I guess actually what we're going to be talking about is the Haven game engine, which is sort of which is true, but it's sort of also part of this. I think it's sort of solidified now that this is the path forward for us, and it's awesome, and it's going to save us hopefully a lot of dev time. We had a lot of down dev time doing a lot of stuff, so we're going to sort of do that. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about what's kind of going on. We kind of sort of had this. I thought this is kind of quite old, but I thought this would be nice because it sort of talked about what we were trying to do a few weeks ago. Is that we are splitting off the person, the characters, the sort of the inventory related stuff, and then the dungeons as sort of these three pillars. And we implemented all this into a project, the main project, and it didn't quite work. And we're kind of like, well, that's not great. And then we were like, well, so we started kind of doing the same thing, but from a different angle. And I think it's which is called this. It's now called the Haven Game Engine, which is kind of our 10th or 20th iteration of this. And hopefully this one will stick around. Building a game engine is quite complicated. And I've always tried to put it off, but it's the more code and the more development time I do, and the different projects I work on, it's like I have to sort of build more robust systems, and that's hopefully what this is going to do. And we've been testing it out, and it seems to be, that's kind of what we did a couple weeks ago, as we started this, as we started this project. So we are actually starting at the point 13, is when we kick this off. So you can see we have about 2 weeks of total here. We could be up to 18 or 19, or actually 20, because you can think about this, because this is actually technically 21, version 21, but anyways, we started this separate branch called the main branch, is now we're going to be calling it, is it's called this Haven Game Engine. Anyway, so then that's actually up to 0.04, which is kind of why there's this question mark set. And that's sort of, we have to decide whether or not we're going to put out a bill. I think what we should do, and it takes a little bit more work, is probably why I'm trying to put it off, but what we should do is take the Hamlet code and files and put it into a new separate build project for now, until we're sort of comfortable with what we're doing. And I guess we sort of have these separate tiers of projects, so it's not, we've talked about a little about the art package. It's not quite working out as well. So anyway, so that's where we're at. And then anyways, the sort of the big thing was the dungeons, which is kind of what I guess so we can actually just sort of here, let me go full screen actually. This is actually what so you can see up here, we're actually in the Haven Game Engine, the 0.04 for the PC, Macs, and Linux, and stuff like that. We can maximize on play. This again just loads into the Hamlet mode. So a couple things of note. We do have these, the grass, the sand, and the ocean. See, we're also kind of not, I think we are colliding with walls. But because of various reasons, but we're actually not colliding. We shouldn't be able to walk in the oceans, and we sort of have lost our ability to sink into the water. But you can sort of see that the character actually does a drop down here, and if we actually this is kind of one of the tests I was going to show off, is that this is a position that's at 11.2, 11, and it sort of gives you your position, but it's adjusting it based on the height. And that's sort of, and I think there's a bug. Where is that? And a lot of this is sort of, I realize it's not quite, oh yeah, you can see there's a little bit of mishap there. But anyway, so that's pretty cool. So it's definitely a lot of work in progress. It's just kind of building out the tech of what we want to do. And unfortunately, I think this is kind of the look we're going to be going for, is this sort of tiered look. You can also see it here as this is a kind of a failed test, was meant to be like you can actually walk up the stairs, but because of the fact that this tile is at 16.0, and this is actually at 16.0. It becomes a slight problem. I guess I can actually, do I actually get data on that? That would be, yeah, okay, perfect. Yeah, it actually does work. I didn't think about this, but anyway, so we can see that the problem here is this is at 16.0, which is a C tile, and then this is at 16.0, which is at a height of about 1, I'm thinking, which is kind of a problem. So, anyways, and then you can see over here, I don't think we ever showed off the dungeon system yet. We still have the house system. I think you can actually pick up the axe. Yeah, we can still pick up the axe. A lot of this is sort of, I think, well, I'm not sure why that one's so low. Oh, yeah, I've seen the house collisions and interactions. A lot of this stuff isn't working, but it's more of the, anyways. This is kind of our permanent temporary dungeon system we're working on, which is kind of really temporary. We still have a lot of. It's just basically meant to be like a dungeon entrance, and then when you step on this thing, it should pop up and say discovered, whatever this dungeon is. And then here's another really interesting bug but it's actually pretty cool, and you can actually. Oh no, the dungeons are disabled right now. But yeah, so it's definitely, and there's kind of another little, hey, why can't I step over here? There should be a stairway here, and obviously you can sort of see that these are 0.1, I think, which is good, but I think the character needs to be able to step down up to a 0.3, and then these actually could be at 0.3, maybe. River tiles could be at 0.3, and then depending on where it spawns. Anyway, so that's kind of, and then I think, let's see, we still get the old, everything else here. We still get the old systems. Everything's sort of, you can bring up the horrible displays, and anyways, and also too, we sort of have integrated also the inventory. So that's one of the things that we are slowly working towards, but it's going to take quite a while. This is actually a fun fact. This is actually meant to be. Oh, I see. Here's the problem. Anyways, fun fact. This is meant to be a backpack that you're supposed to be able to pick up, but the backpack hasn't been displayed very. And we haven't really. We can display axes on the ground for some reason, which is kind of we could, and we picked it up, but that's kind of strange that we can't display. And also, you can also see that we have our characters and everything's sort of backed, and then you can also do your. We showed about this real quick, but you can also add the logs in and sort of. And then I'm not sure about the colliders on this. It's kind of a question like, should I collide with this object? I think we're going to let it slide for a while until it gets to maybe to a certain point, and then you can step on top of it or something. Anyways, we're not quite sure. So it may seem like there's a big step back. I definitely regret the fact that we're not in the rivers, but then adding the 0.3 dip down would actually be pretty significant, so that it would be displayed as a river, and then the character could step down into it and then feel like they're more immersed into it, and based on the depth as well. We can have different depths of rivers, and there's also another maybe interesting thing. The other sort of thing I want to call out too, it's been thinking about it for a long time, but in this sort of roguelike adventure mode, you kind of would like to say what's under my mouse, and that's kind of like, this is what meant to showcase is what's under my mouse, which is actually really handy to debug out like stuff like this over here, is that we can definitively say that this is highlighting the C tile at 16.0, and this is highlighting the node tile at 16.0, and that becomes the problem, and this is 16 minus 1. Why is that? Oh, because it's -1. Yeah, so we probably need to start including the height data in debug modes. And anyways, you can still see our pathers. I have combined the pathers into the final NPC class. So there's sort of a maybe a better working example of NPCs versus our Larry, Mo, and Curly over here, which are just meant to be static characters to test out different things. but then this is kind of where we generate this guy, which generates a random name each time. We can actually probably just showcase this real quick, that he generates the random name each time. And then this is our no unit test over here, which just sort of how, yeah. And he does, well, I guess we're actually, no one obeys, yeah, so now he's Kevin Starr. Anyway, so that's pretty good. I think one of the, well, let's go back to the, yeah, so that's hopefully, you can see now we have this first starting of dungeons. We can't enter the dungeons now. We used to be able to slightly. We're going to have to figure out how to get the stairs correct, and we might, because of how we're redesigning things, we might readjust how dungeons work, how do you enter them, and I know the graphics are pretty bad, but hopefully we have maybe a little cave entrance, or, we're just trying to get the code down packed and try to build these massive, sort of bigger worlds. And then so this is sort of done, this is done, and then this is sort of working on, but we haven't, I think we're almost ready to go, but we just, I think we do need to dump just a ton of UI onto the character people, and then sort of talking about, well, when is the actual build is going to get out there, which is kind of, so anyways, yeah, so I left this in there, but yeah, so it's kind of what we were doing last week. We were talking about we're running a studio, so part of that is sort of getting this game engine up and running for me, so I can have multiple development, sort of keep the creative juices flowing, and try to really, make sure that I'm sort of really developing as much code as I can, which is kind of, more code, and then hopefully as, and things improve and get better, it's like it really helps. And I think it's sort of something I realized that I was working on this a Bible-based app, and it was like I was like, oh, I got to focus on that. And it was like when I took a break and started working on all of these other things, it's like there's so many other things that wrapped back into the app that was really amazing. Anyway, so we'll have to see how this week goes. It might take a bit to get that build up. We've sort of completed our dungeon goal with the core dungeon code is actually in the project. We've started implementing some of the dungeon features that we had, and we still got the whole the dungeon generates. It's sort of a take on it's the Rogue House sort of take on the dungeons. We kind of looking at the Athos. I don't remember Delaney. There's a different dungeon generation patterns, and we'll have to look at which one we want to see. I think the Rogue House one is good because it generates these rooms. And then from there we can generate quarters. I think is what we're doing. Yeah, well, they're rooms that are quarters. Anyway, so we can sort of really, hopefully, take that up a notch, and then see how I like the big expansive dungeons instead of the really tiny ones, because it feels like in a 3D game you need a little bit more room, and you have tons of rooms in the roguelike. So anyway, so the next goal, the next goal would be to get a build out that's sort of, and then maybe get back to sort of some of this more. Trees are also not included in the build. We have to figure out, I think it's just partly of we're not sending data to the right area or something. Anyways, and here's, you can see we're generating that axe, and we should be able to generate a backpack. And anyway, so we're still kind of working on graphics. We've been working on graphics and a lot of other things in the background that are sort of take a long gestate time. I think that's what a lot of these, we're sort of have to push out pretty early code because it's like showcases, because it's like we're, there's so many moving parts that we, develop, and it's like, we spend and we're sort of, I think we're sort of getting to the point where this is kind of the graphics we want, and then we just got to have everything match up to that as our goal eventually. Anyway, so we just kind of want to wrap this up. I think it's been about, I guess we could pop over here real quick. It's been what, 20? Oh, it's only been 20 minutes. So hey, that's a short video for Micaiah. But yeah, so I think maybe just to kind of stretch it out a little bit, just to I also want to talk about the build. So that's kind of the next major thing. Is like we have a game engine build that we can push out, but it sort of doesn't include all the cool stuff. We could sort of put all the old cool splash screens and logos and icons and stuff into the new engine, but I think it might be more smarter just to put the Hamlet code into the old Hamlet project and sort of update that project, and then we could push out a build there. The other thing too about the build is like we didn't want it to feel like we took a step back. I think let me see if I can. It's always one of the sort of one of the things too about I think we're okay on the campaign. Yeah. Come on. Oh no. Yeah. See, so like various aspects of the campaign, is not quite working. I actually had it working a little while ago, but yeah. So anyways, it's kind of, and then too, we also need to adjust the dungeons and the camera and all sorts of things. You know. Anyways, one thing we talked about, a lot of games do, is that we have this overworld view, and if you enter the dungeon, we kind of want the physicality of actually going into the dungeon, but then that would sort of equate that the whole overworld would have to go away, which is something we've been planning for a very, 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 since the very get-go of the game, and various fun bugs with that. But it's like, it still sort of feels like a lot of rogues, a lot of games go with this idea that you have an overworld, you interact with the overworld, and then you load into a different scene, which is sort of Unity's favorite way to do it, I think, in the past. And it's like, then you unload the entire scene, load in this new scene of the dungeon, put your character in there, run all the dungeon logic, monsters, fighting, combat, who knows what's in the future for dungeons. It's sort of the idea. And then when you exit, you can actually go down another level, which now loads the same level again, maybe. Procedurally generates the dungeon or loads it from a file, whatever it remembers of the dungeon. And then when you teleport out, and go to the town level, it's like it unloads the entire dungeon level and reloads the town. And that's sort of not the type of game we would like to build for a lot of reasons. And we kind of like the physicality of just, at the dungeon level. We actually kind of want this idea where you're at the dungeon level and eventually you just hit page down and the whole dungeon level just, zooms into view, and then you can go through the various dungeon levels and sort of navigate around the world, seeing what's happening at the dungeon, or zooming to a character, or any number of different technology ideas that you can just say, hey, over here we could have a sidebar, just clicking on a character and it zooms to that character. Anyway, so the point, so a lot of that is sort of in place, but the point is, how do we get that build into your hands? Even though it's there are a few early people and different people that are sort of at various levels of interaction. So I think that's really cool, and I think we need to get much more. We need to support them as well because they're supporting us. So So anyway, so we'll have to see how we can accomplish that and push out the new build to the Steam, and then it feels like we're making progress. It's been about a month or two, I think, since I pushed out a build. So it's unfortunate, but it's there's a couple in this month work right here has been, I think it's been finally paying off right now. I don't want to be like, oh man, this is, I feel like it's been a month, but the progress has been amazing, going from 13 to 21 or whatever you want to call the build right now. I actually might just implement this 18 or something. Anyways, just to slow down the build cycle, but yeah, it's just been amazing now, and it's finally, everything's sort of coming together. The engine's coming together, the data path is coming together, the benefits are starting to expand and just be really noticeable and make it much easier. and now we need to sort of, excuse me, rewrite the inventory and all that into this new data system. And once all that's done, I think it would be much easier to sort of, excuse me, put everything together and finish and get moving. Sort of feel like we're sort of leaving that pre-alpha stage or wherever we're at. We're sort of leaving that and getting a lot of the core technology done, and then start building out and sort of fixing things and start adding in the content, which is going to take quite a while, I think, still, just because there's a ton more systems we want to do and a ton more different ideas, and we'll have to see how it goes and what sort of path we take with the town level, and then sort of see if we can make any improvements to the dungeon. So, anyways, that's Hamlet development log number 8. It's going to take a bit, but we hopefully are making some pretty good progress, and we'll have a lot more to showcase next. It just depends on where this goes. I think we need to sort of hash out exactly what the build's going to be, and then sort of we should sort of, instead of putting it off, we should get that out there. But anyways, my name is Micaiah Stevens. This has been for Hamlet, and thanks very much, and we'll see everybody next time. You take care.